Hey, welcome back to the Healthy Living Scottsdale podcast. I'm your host, Coach Zach. I am here with Coach Brandy and Coach Kelsey. And today we are talking about menopause. We have an exciting 2 episodes for you. Actually, we're breaking this into 2 parts. So stay tuned for that. But before we do get into today's topic, we want to give a little shout out to a member of the week. And this week's member is Elisa Cruz. So won't tell you why.
She will know
so many reasons.
Elisa, this podcast topic is for you. And thank you for all the knowledge you bring to me every day on the training floor. While I bring you the training knowledge, you bring me the menopause and all of that knowledge. Anyways, you crush it at the gym every day. You're always lifting heavy. I can hear you from across the room. I know you're working hard. I'm so proud of you, and keep doing what you're doing and keep coming in those great outfits, because I'm gonna buy some. They're in my Amazon code.
She works hard. She lifts heavy. She looks amazing.
Yep.
And she's hilarious. She's so much fun to train. Elisa, we love training you.
Elisa's awesome. She's been a client. She's been client of the week before. She came in, started here because she was going to have knee surgery, and she's like, I got to get in shape for knee surgery. Not that I think she was ever out of shape, but trained really, really hard up until knee surgery, and then got back in the gym as soon as she got cleared. And she's done phenomenal. But I have a funny story about Lisa. She asked me for a key fob because we were closed over like a holiday weekend. And she came back after the holiday weekend and gave me the key fob. And I was like, no, you can keep the key fob. And she's like, no, it's too much responsibility for me. I'll lose it. And I was like, okay, or, just keep it. She's like, no, I'll come back and get it next time. And so I just have it in my drawer, and it's just her key fob. And I know it's sitting there so that like next time she asks for it, I don't have to reset it or do anything. I just be like, here you go. And just know that she's
ready for her.
She's going to bring it back and give it to me.
She knows her strengths and her weaknesses.
I guess so, right? She's like, I won't be able to sleep. It's too much pressure. All right, let's talk about this topic. So, I'm really excited for this. Brandy, you shared a resource podcast with us, and you're like, hey, you guys got to listen to this. And I think I've always, for years since I got into training, I had some women that were going through menopause, and I studied it and researched, and I learned a lot about this topic. But this information that you shared with me just like blew me away. I was sitting there and I was like, this is so incredible. We have to take this information and share it with our listeners. So I'm super excited about this. And so what we want to do today is kind of walk through what menopause is, and lay the foundation. And then in the next episode, we'll get into the actual like training protocol, which I think is going to really shock some people, and the nutrition protocol, that's going to shock some people as well. So go ahead, Brandy, I'll let you kind of walk through lay this out for everybody and let them know like what, I think everybody has an idea of what menopause is, but you can provide the details.
Sure. And wanted to start with, so October is apparently a Menopause Awareness Month, which I was not aware that October was a month that we, celebrated menopause and shared this information. And I think it's really important that we talk about menopause. I think in the past, this is starting to not be the case, but in the past, menopause is kind of a taboo topic. People didn't really talk about it. I know when I was growing up, I never heard women around me talking about this. And it's really important because if you are a woman, you will at some point in your life go through this transition and then eventually end up in menopause. So it's something that every woman...
Glad I get to miss that.
Every woman will experience this transition. And so every woman should care about this regardless of your age, and just a better understanding of what it is, how it impacts your body, and really importantly, what you can do to help prevent some of the symptoms that happen during this phase. But then men should care about it too, because, if there's a woman in your life that you love, whether it's a mother, a daughter, your wife, whoever, at some point she's going to be going through this phase of her life. And it would be nice to know how to support her, because it can be a really hard transition.
Yeah. Yeah, we could probably start like a men's support group. You
Yes.
Men for menopause.
Men for menopause. Yeah,
I
there
think
we go.
Should. I think
So we can go. I think that's called a bar. You know, just go and drink and complain about our wives and all the struggles they're having.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I like that you mentioned something there. You kind of touched on it, but I just want to highlight it. Is if you're younger, what you do in your younger years will impact how menopause affects you. And so this is really important because I think that, you know, it's one of those things. It's like, oh, that's in my future. I'll worry about it when the time comes. It's like, no, if you're 40 years old or older, you really ought to be preparing for this now, right?
Yes.
And taking action now. So, okay, cool. So, Kelsey, you have anything you want to add to this conversation?
Other than the fact that I'm terrified. So. can't wait.
Can't wait.
Don't be terrified. Like, set yourself up for, the best transition possible. I think, like you said, just like cardiovascular health, like what you do in your 20s and 30s will help determine where you are like later on in life and whether or not you have cardiovascular health issues. So same thing with menopause. You can help, you can set some standards up early on in life to help you prepare for that transition and make that transition easier.
Okay. So walk us through the process, perimenopause, menopause, post-menopause, kind of lay it out, the journey.
Yeah, so
Kelsey's future.
So I guess one thing that surprised me as I was learning more about this is that women can go into perimenopause. So perimenopause is essentially when your hormones in your body start to fluctuate and change. And you might have reductions in your estrogen, your progesterone, your testosterone, your thyroid, like all of these hormones in your body start to down regulate. And that can happen as young as 35. So that transition can start as early as your 30s. So if you start to notice, changes in your mood, changes in, how your body feels, changes in how you respond to exercise, and if you notice changes in your stress level, stuff like that, those can all be signs of perimenopause.
Irregular periods.
Yes.
Weight gain.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. So perimenopause can happen, again, as early as 35. And someone might go through perimenopause for up to 10 years before they actually hit menopause. And then menopause.
And if I may, one thing that we're seeing now because of all of the pseudo estrogens in our society, like all plastic is like estrogen based. And so exposure to all of that is causing young girls to get their periods earlier. And it's actually accelerating. If you hit puberty and you get your period younger, you're going to go into menopause or perimenopause likely, earlier than you normally would. Yep. And so we have seen over the years that perimenopause and kind of this transition start taking place earlier and earlier in women. Sorry, go ahead.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. And then menopause is defined as 12 months straight of essentially having zero menstruation or zero period. So you don't technically hit menopause until you have 12 months straight without a period. So then after that 12 month, then that woman is considered to be in menopause, and then she's no longer menstruating. And, at that point, your hormones start down regulating during perimenopause. And then during menopause, women will notice there is a significant decrease in hormone levels throughout their body.
Yeah. Which then leads to?
Yes. A full body experience. A full body experience. So I think sometimes you hear about menopause and you think like night sweats and hot flashes, which that is a thing that does happen to many women. Not everyone will experience that, but that is something that does happen. But but menopause really does impact a woman's entire body. So I'll just give you some examples of ways that you might experience this. And again, not every woman is the same. Some have different experiences than others, but your endocrine system, so your hormone levels change. Like we talked about, all the different hormones in your body change. Estrogen levels, progesterone, testosterone, all of those things tend to decrease, and then a lot of times we'll see an increase in cortisol, and that also may have to do with stress levels as well, because at the same time, a lot of times women in this phase in their life are also experiencing high levels of stress, whether it's career-wise, family-wise, dealing, caregiving, all these different things that they're dealing with in addition to their hormones changing.
And I've seen that firsthand with many clients that I've worked with over the years. They have, either a very high stress job, or they go through some sort of traumatic experience. Could be a very stressful divorce, or losing a child, or a troubled child, and they're dealing with this for a decade, right?
Yes.
And then they go into perimenopause and menopause, and it's almost like, I don't want to say it's impossible, but it becomes so much more challenging to get that person to really overcome these hormonal changes and reverse them to some degree, as somebody that didn't necessarily go through that. And so and who doesn't have that type of stuff? Like, whose life's perfect?
Right.
Very few people. And so, there's very few individuals that I have worked with where they come in and I'm like, okay, well, you're 54 years old. Like, have you gone through menopause? What's that look like? And they're like, I have no symptoms. Like, that's one out of like 300
rare.
people. Yeah. Right. And I'm like, well, that's phenomenal. Good for you. But it's very, very rare.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's important. The point of me sharing that is, like, it's important for us to know, hey, if you're going through and you're kind of struggling with life, right? Just life things that are happening to you, it's important that we're taking actions now and steps now to make sure that when you do have this transition and all of a sudden that stress is gone,
right.
We don't have the career, or we made it, or, your teenage kid figures it out or whatever, that then you're not left with the aftermath of that.
Yeah. So, dealing with stress management strategies are really important. So that's one of the things we'll talk about later. But just to add on to, other ways that this impacts a woman's body, the central nervous system. So there are receptors in our brains that are impacted by our change in hormones. So this can affect our mood, cognition, and, and your cognitive function as well. So you may notice that you're not remembering things as well as you used to, or you're forgetful, things like that. Or I hear a lot, like, just having trouble regulating your mood. So that
totally,
so that's a huge factor.
Yep. And I heard it say by this doctor one time. He's like, he describes it as like the axe syndrome, where a woman just literally feels like putting an axe through her husband's head and doesn't understand. I mean, there might be, some many reasons for that. But they just don't understand, like, hey, all of a sudden there's this switch that just flipped and I'm just like angry and I just want to like have this outburst of rage. And it's nothing changed except hormonally, your ability to kind of deal with those stressors has changed.
Yes.
And so my point is, like, don't put an axe through your husband's head, but it's not your fault if you feel that way. It's just a part of kind of this process that you're going through.
Yeah, that's just how your brain is responding to all these changes in your body. So other things, your muscular skeletal system can be impacted. So you can have age-related loss of muscle.
Yep.
That's a big impact of going through menopause. Bone density tends to decrease. And then slower healing of connective tissues within the body. So, your tendons and things like that tend to heal slower if there is an injury during this phase of your life.
Great.
Metabolism changes, so how the body uses and stores energy and nutrients. So as women go through menopause, they tend to favor, their bodies tend to favor holding on to body fat.
Yeah.
So, you'll hear a lot of times, well, I never had trouble before, but now all of a sudden I have this belly fat. And I used to be really thin, and, now I just can't lose this weight.
Yep.
So that is a factor. Cardiovascular system, their blood vessels become less elastic and more prone to inflammation. Cardiovascular disease risk increases because of this. And then we mentioned hot flashes. So your vasomotor system, there are changes in your body's temperature. And that may come and go. So that's usually not a steady change in the body temperature, but certain times, like at night, someone may wake up with night sweats. They're having that change in their body temperature, and you can't control that.
You go from 98 to 5,000.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. Other ways, so just a few more. Sleep and your circadian rhythm can be disrupted. GI issues are common, so stomach upset. So the change in sex hormones can lead to digestive hormones and enzyme changes that cause those gut issues. And then inflammation, so lower estrogen levels. Lower estrogen can in turn increase inflammation throughout the body. So that's a really important factor, and that's one of the reasons why your body tends to hold on to that visceral fat, is because your body is more inflamed. And then, skin issues, so loss of estrogen, you can have drier skin and drier membranes, and pelvic floor dysfunction is also another really important symptom and issue that that many women are dealing with, right?
See,
this
is gonna be a no for me, dog. I'm gonna pass on this one. Dang, it's bad. It all sounds bad.
It doesn't stop.
How many times have we trained someone, and I've experienced this myself, you're doing a heavy squat or heavy deadlift, and you're like, all right, I feel like I'm going to pee my pants. I've heard that from many women.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's the pelvic floor, you're jumping and it's like, all right, I can't jump rope anymore. That's just not going to be it for me.
Yeah.
But there are things you can do to improve that.
All right. Well, that paints a glamorous picture. So, no, I think what we should do is let's end there now that you have the dark, horrible image in your mind of menopause. And then let's talk about in the next episode how you combat this and what your training looks like in your nutrition, because that's really, that obviously sounds awful, a lot of that.
Wow.
And every woman's going to go through that, like you said. So what can you do about it? And that's really, I'm excited to talk about that.
Yes.
So
before we move on to the next episode, because I know we're focusing on exercise and nutrition, but there are other things women should also focus on: the stress management and sleep. So I don't know if we'll be touching on that so much in the next episode, but those are two other ways you can impact how severely your body transitions. Is get your sleep in control and deal with that, and then stress management, ways to handle stress.
Fantastic. All right, guys, that's what we got for you. We'll be back next week with part 2. Thank you so much for listening to the Healthy Living Scottsdale podcast. Do you have a question that you'd like for us to answer live on the podcast? If so, all you need to do is head over to the Apple Podcast app on your iPhone and do 3 simple things. First, leave us a rating and review telling me what you think of the podcast. In that review, ask anything you want related to health, fitness, or nutrition. And if you want a shout out, leave us your Instagram handle or name. That's all you have to do. Then listen to hear your questions answered live on the next Q&A episode.